2007 over, knowing what we know now,
Yes.
what would you have done differently?
Oh, yeah. I like that.
What don't you do on Twitter now that you used to do? Can you even remember?
I think follow Fridays would be the one that would be the note. Get rid of the follow Fridays.
Oh, you think that would solve the problems that ended up happening on Twitter if we just didn't follow Fridays?
Follow Fridays had been eliminated, the entire trajectory. No, I don't know. I mean,
well, I just think okay. I mean, but here's the deal, Brian. We go 0 day. Okay, Elon Musk still owns it, correct?
Oh, he does. But isn't that related to the big question of the night, which is he's not actually going to let the car collapse, right?
You're wrong.
Hold on.
Am I the only one?
Hold on.
Am I the...
Well, hold on.
I don't know.
You're wrong.
I think I agree with Brian. I don't know. Part of me thinks that like he can't let it collapse.
No, you guys are nuts. I'm telling you, this is like he definitely will let it collapse, and then he'll say like the business has failed. I got to write it off and move on with his life. This is not a normal person like who has normal concerns.
It's also not his choice, right? Like when you only have 12% of your staff left, like it's not his choice anymore.
Right. That's right.
But conversely, he also has investors and debtors to please. So it's also not his choice for that reason.
But people have to
I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried has investors and debtors to please too. But like, here he is.
What's he doing right now? Can we get him in to fix this? What's he up to right now?
Yeah,
he's got some ideas.
We could definitely get SBF to comment on this based on what I've seen in the last 48 hours.
Yeah,
Brian,
I think that we just need to tell
to Little St. James.
Yeah, tell him that bailing out Twitter would help the most amount of people with the least. It's the effective altruism would be.
Oh, you're saying SBF can once he gets the $8 billion he needs to raise, he can bail out Twitter? Is that the plan?
Exactly. Emily Dreyfus, do you think
Twitter
that
was purchased for $44 billion? Is that the right number?
I think so. I want to hear from Emily. But Emily, what do you think is going to happen to Twitter? Should it be bailed out by effective altruists?
I mean, I don't think that would be the effective altruistic thing to do, because probably it's better for society to not have Twitter. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. But can you guys hear me? I've never used this app before, so I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
This is my app.
We're hanging on every word.
Thanks, guys. Well, so what made me click to ask to speak was that Katie, you asked like, what do you guys not do on Twitter anymore, since Twitter has already changed so much. Man, I wanted to answer that because I just think back to the old days when I just used to treat Twitter like it was a private room with my best friends and say all of the embarrassing things and personal shit that, and I got really embarrassed and uncomfortable to share because Twitter got so people started getting, their lives ruined by their one comment that went viral.
Well, that's how people get canceled. That's how people got canceled, right? In the early days of cancellation.
Wait, quick question. Is it a signal thing, or are we breaking this space at this point?
No, I think we're over 10,000 right now and growing, by the way, at a rapid pace. And I do think this space could actually destroy Twitter.
We can do this, guys. Wait, because
I think we can only pray.
Emily, can you repeat the last part of what you were saying? Just because on my end it was glitching out really bad.
No, it was glitching out for everybody. I think she's having some cell phone issues, or Twitter Spaces is breaking.
I'm thinking it's the space. I think we might be doing it, guys. We might be the one to finally take this thing down.
So Joshua and Ryan, you both sounded fine, but I think Emily was breaking up.
Well, it's probably my phone, guys. Can you hear me now, or am I still breaking up?
Are you on an Android device? Sorry, that's rude.
All right. As host of this, I'm sorry, but I have to review his speakers. I feel like this is I'm a big Howard Stern fan, and sometimes he'll yell at people if they're on a cell phone instead of a landline. I feel like that's me.
Are you muting Emily? No, I think she's okay now.
Yeah, was it Emily? I want to know. I want to go back to Charlie. Because Charlie, you have said that Twitter has made you, I know that Twitter has made you feel bad. And you've also done a lot of reporting on Twitter, not so much recently, but in years past when things were sort of like in a bad zone, where like it was sort of like lots of bad things happening at Twitter. And then Twitter really did clean itself up a lot after about the harassment and abuse kind of stuff. Do you think of like Twitter like it's a company that was changing, was trying to do the right thing, and then the rug got pulled out from under it? Like what do you think about that trajectory? Because I feel like you're intimately involved in that.
Twitter probably didn't get as much credit for doing for actually responding and trying to they did a lot of all the abuse reporting stuff was pretty reasonably well done with input from people who were having trouble on that, and from 2016 to 2018 they did a lot of stuff that was important. I requested to speak though to say we should all tweet the same GIF at the same time, just a high megabyte load, and just see if if everyone in this room does it.
Charlie,
what's that about loads?
Are you suggesting that we try to break Twitter? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, why not? We got 10,000 people.
But you were just saying no, hold on. 10 minutes ago, you were like, I'm really mad at Elon Musk for breaking Twitter.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
Whoa, guys.
No.
Guys.
I think this makes a lot of sense because
when it
sometimes you just want to see the world burn, and that's what we want to do here.
We're getting full Joker pilled here.
I contain multitudes, man.
Look, when it comes to simultaneously tweeting about loads, we got to go to Masturbate Log because he's the expert on that.
Katie Dewey, at this point, I don't know. There's 11,000 people listening.
Masturbate Log, what do you think? You're well versed in tweets.
I do have a journalism degree. I feel like I belong here.
Okay, fair enough. Masturbate Log, what do you think?
What do we do to break Twitter?
Yeah, do you want to break Twitter? Is that what you'd like to do?
I kind of just want to see it play out.
Okay.
If this is what does it, so be it.
Okay. Can we hear from Brian Stelter, former CNN show host and anchor, who I think is driving right now? Brian, are you on the road at this moment?
Are you headed to Twitter's headquarters?
Yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm on the way to the headquarters. I want to sign up to help repair the site. Come on, everybody.
I love Brian. I love your enthusiasm. Do you think there is a solution here? Can you think of a solution right now? Forget about 0 day because that's kind of an impossibility. But what would you do right now to fix or to save Twitter?
To be honest, I don't
want Katie to throw me off for being on a cell phone connection.
No, you're fine. You sound great. Keep going.
I actually have no idea. I know that people on this call have answers. I have no idea.
Wow.
But I do suspect, I'm guessing right now, that Musk has lots of friends who are willing to prop him up and do this, even if they are in the, if they're going to be hard to get logged in because there's nobody at Twitter headquarters to log in the building, right?
Brian, you think he has enough support to keep this thing going, even though all of his engineers and all of the core teams, the infrastructure teams are bailing right now? You think there's just some kind of, he can just throw enough money at the problem?
That's what my gut tells me. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I agree. I think that I do think that right now we are seeing Twitter Twitter die. There this will be looked back on probably as this period of time as this is Twitter dying, and there will be a new Twitter, and it won't be popular because it'll be propped up with weird stuff to make money. It'll be kind of janky and broken for a while, and we've seen this. I mean, actually, the best example of this is probably Dig, where Dig did not just disappear after everyone went to Reddit. It just sort of stumbled along for a while and got passed around different companies and reinvented itself into something that doesn't even resemble what it used to. And I think that's probably the best thing that we could kind of hope for with Twitter at this point.
Well, I mean, you're describing the path of most of the websites that we used to love and we no longer spend any time on.
I buy all my NFTs on LimeWire now. So that's where I get most of my Bored Apes.
Okay, what do you say? Okay, fine. But what do you say to the fact that Down Detector has a huge spike in reports on Twitter in the last 24 hours, in particularly in the last 6 hours?
I think it'll go down, and I think it'll come up, and it'll go down, it'll come up, and people will just sort of wander away,
But you're hitting on the most immediate short-term problem for Musk. I mean, overnight, which is the late night shows, the morning shows. Twitter's now a joke. And that's not what he wants, not what he needs. Can he avoid that for more than a day or two?
Well, I mean, he wants it to be a joke, but one that we're all in on. I think it's a joke that he's the joke right here. I mean, I think the problem is that this just looks like abject failure, and doesn't it seem preventable? Like, doesn't it seem like this scenario was kind of the outlier? I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know. Like, did it have to go down like this?
And I would love to hear Anil's point of view on this.
Oh yes, Anil Dash, one of the first recommended, suggested users on Twitter. Also a brilliant man.
Oh, look at that! I got a hype man. This is great. Let's break it. Let's break the site.
Let's
do it. You want to break it?
12,000 people. Let's post Goatsy all at the same time.
Whoa! Hey!
13.
It's not that kind of party.
Okay, Anil, break it down. Anil, break it down for us. What's going on?
All of the things aside, I think the really, really interesting thing is.
Have we lost Anil?
Oh no!
That was so dramatic.
Is he doing a
bit?
No,
I really wasn't. Did it drop out? That's really funny.
Yeah, you said the really interesting thing is.
Yeah, you're back. All right, hold on, quick before you drop again. What's the really interesting
the criticism they've had is, these wokes are running this site and they're doing it for their political purposes, even though it's bad business, right? That was the sort of inside the Musk bubble. That's the rhetoric at it. And the funny thing is, what you have is a site that's being run for a political purpose, even though it's destroying the business, is actually what's happening now. They're like, we're going to prove a point about we're in charge, and we're firing all the people that do the content management and eventually everybody else. And it's such a funhouse mirror version of the criticism they had about the site, what they imagined Twitter was doing. And I think, like, all the technology aside and whatever else, like, the tech is going to fail. Like, I have enough technology knowledge to be dangerous. I see Kelsey Hightower is here, who's far more of an expert on this stuff than I would be. But there is no way you get 90 days out or 120 days out from now, and there aren't significant technical failures of the kind where it's not like it shuts off one day and they can't get it back up. That's some risk. Much more likely is it's so intermittently failing that everybody just gets so annoyed that they flee and they get out of the habit.
That's actually kind of returning. That's like returning to its roots. I mean, remember the fail whale used to be one of the big detractors from wanting to use Twitter.
Yeah, but I think that thing was like, it was still so compelling and new that you sort of fought your way through it. And I think that a return of like fail whale-esque performance at this moment, when it means something so different in culture, I think really threatens the stability of the site. But I just am struck by culturally of like Musk and clearly his little. I think of the David Sachs is in there, so I think of the Musk Sachs room. That's got to be. It's got to smell incredible.
That sounds so gross.
It's 100% accurate. You know that it's exactly what that room.
They're like in there. It's like the
Sachs. Yeah,
that's like the House of the Dragon. It's like he's got the map out and they're moving the little pieces around.
Totally.
And
in that room, they're like,
it
we're
smells
killing
like they've
it.
been playing Warhammer in there for hours.
Right, but in that room, they're like, we're killing it. We're doing great. This is exactly going to according to plan. Right.
I mean, but is it? But do you think they really think that? They can't imagine that.
No, but that's the only thing you can say in that room, right? Like they're aware, right. But if you're like, like sweaty Jason Calacanis in that
like
room,
the high five. It's like the bro high five.
Yeah, 100%. You're like, this is going according to plan.
Yeah, no bad vibes in that room. But the reality is, like outside of that room, it's only bad vibes.
Right.
So, I mean, what's the solution? Anil, you got, like, what would you do?
What would I do? What's the goal?
You're put in charge of Twitter. You're CEO of Twitter tomorrow.
Save Twitter?
Yeah, you get Freaky Friday into Elon Musk
tomorrow. Oh, God. I think if you're trying to save Twitter, I mean, the kind of jokes aside, there's this, like, how do you save it culturally and how do you save it technically? And the technical thing, like, if you had an environment where people could trust we're not going to be actively abused, we're going to have a good job, you could probably hire the right people technically to do it. So that's like you don't have to invent something. That's like a task. But culture,
right? But Musk would have to do a mea culpa in some way, right?
I mean, I don't think there's any apology he could offer. I mean, I think you have to have somebody else in there. But like, okay, let's sort of say like there's you wave your magic wand and you can get in the people. The other thing is like what it is in culture. Like it is the real battleground. Like this is really like we're so eager to own the libs that we will kill this thing. That's stunning. Like to realize they're that far gone within the bubble. I think it's been honestly been shocking.
Do you really think that's like that is actually his? I don't think that's do you think that's a goal of his to own the libs?
I think it's an incidental, like it's indistinguishable from what he cares about. Like he really thought like, I know how to fix this. I know what to do.
Yeah, don't you think it's more, that's the thing, isn't it more of the ego, this idea that he's got the solution to the problem, less like a philosophical or political position?
Yeah.
Because
But he
I'm not
doesn't
saying
have
like,
friends, right? It's the
but
same people that didn't tell him you're not funny enough to be on SNL.
like
Didn't tell
yeah,
him you
like
don't know enough about social networks to run Twitter.
But the Twitter blue shit is wild. I mean, just to be clear, like this idea that somehow Twitter blue, like blue check marks, what is it, 470,000 people in the 200 million active users? Like the idea that you think there's value in the check mark without checking the data, because the check mark is valuable in some ways, but in a really, really narrow way.
Well, and this is what I say about the
you,
own the libs energy, because like the people who are obsessed with like, what does the blue check mark mean and how do you get it? Like that is a very small bubble within a bubble.
right.
And it does overlap a lot with the sort of own the libs people, and it has the same sort of brainworms. And like
I mean, I
those
guess
folks,
in that
like
sense,
that's this thing that like warps your decision making, because nobody would come in and do that first.
I hate to interrupt, but I'd love to get the thoughts of Reddit College Football on this. So Reddit College Football, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Fighting flu, but can you hear me?
Oh, you have a really good voice for this. Holy cow.
Thanks. Yeah, we do. We did talks for like 110 times. And every time we start one, the joke is will we finish it, right? So I apologize for bursting. And I had a question just because there's sort of like two aspects of Twitter that have pretty much been successful, and where do they go? Sports Twitter has been sort of a pretty good setup. And I think maybe it's because sports writers, as many of you are writers, and it's an opportunity to kind of live experience big moments in sports, and it's kind of its own little ecosystem. And then the other one, and we sometimes see it because we'll have talks on HBCU football, but Black Twitter has been a major part of the culture within Twitter. Where do we see those two going?
Well, I mean, the problem, this is what we were talking about before, where nobody who sold the company to Elon Musk gave a shit about the communities, right? If they did, they'd go, hold on, Elon, before you buy it, like we need to know what you're going to do or how you're going to take care of these like groups that exist here. I mean, I think like those are perfect examples where it's real vibrant, like there's real value there.
I think I saw Liz on mute. I'd love to get her thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's interesting because, having been on Twitter since 2007, you really see how Black folks made Twitter the success that it became. If you had not had us, I mean, if you all saw Black Twitter today speculating and roasting Carrie Lake for potentially being a biracial or light-skinned Black woman who's passing for white, you understand the hilariousness of that on that level. But also, would R. Kelly have been taken down the way that he was? Would Shonda Rhimes have become a global superstar, if it wasn't for Black folks, every single week live tweeting Scandal, live tweeting Insecure, like, putting Issa Rae out there, when she had been making web series for years. I think a lot of what has happened, if any of you all follow Sarah Kendzior on Twitter, I mean, that's how I discovered her work, and just, reading her book about like sort of the deliberate decisions that are made to silence communities. And I think there's definitely some deliberate, choices that were made to silence Black folks' voices in this country, and I think that's undeniable. Even in this space, I was thinking about who is talking in this space right here. All of the Black folks, there's a completely different conversation going on about what is happening right now among Black folks on Twitter versus what's in the room here right now. And that's, I
bring
think,
them in. Can you bring them in? Let's get some people in here. Like,
but what I'm saying though, in that sense is that, there's folks like, Jose Vilson, who, my Afro-Latino brother, who is in New York City, who was in this room for a little while. And I wanted to be like, hey, Jose, you should say something, because he's been an educator and a voice for public education, who has talked, extensively, and really has a huge following in the education community on Twitter. But I think it's just a matter of recognizing the role that Black people may. I mean, all of the companies that basically got marketing campaigns off of Black folks on Twitter for free, I mean, the fact that the changes that went down at the Oscars because of April and her Oscars So White campaign, like that's real. And there are, if we are honest about it, and if we are honest about racism in this country and anti-blackness, there are folks who are kind of fed up with it. And it would not be so sad to have that disappeared. So
Liz, do you think, I mean, I feel like I know the obvious answer, like, does Elon Musk know about that or care about that? I feel like the obvious answer is obvious.
The son of
But
apartheid, does he care about that?
Right, yeah.
But do you think that, like, do you think that he even has an inkling that this is something that is valuable about Twitter?
Well, I think that there's a thing of like Black people are valuable until someone decides that we're not, right? And that's always been the case in the US. We do all the work, but then someone says you all aren't actually that useful. But you could best believe that, in Twitter's, whatever spreadsheets and whatever that looks like, that they have crunched the numbers on the value of what Black folks' participation in Twitter and sort of dedication to that space. When we were talking earlier about a third space, or a third place, remember when Starbucks wanted to be the third place? But for Black folks, Twitter became that third place. That was where everybody gathered around to like be, talk about like, here's what's going down on any award show, that was going on, TV shows, politics, all of that. And so that's a really powerful thing. So the thing is that Elon, maybe he thinks that who cares if that's what made the power of that and the dedication of that user base, who cares about that? Because I still have my way that I want to do. Elon 2.0.
Yeah, I think the thing I call out, sort of being Black Twitter adjacent, all these years, is the tone is so different right now in terms of grieving and where will these networks go, and where am I going to find my people, right?
Yeah.
Because we made these relationships, and I think that's something that is, it's different. And like I also love the frivolity of like, ship's going down, let's be the ones playing the music as it goes down. But I think it is something that is a much more profound loss when you don't have the other networks. Like part of the reason, I think Black Twitter formed is because there had been the absence of a place to do it. There wasn't, there weren't these other media outlets. There wasn't any other context for it. I also do want to nudge Brandy a little bit to step up, because Brandy, I see you as a speaker here.
Yeah, I got a couple things. I'll circle back to Black Twitter, my thoughts there. But I think as someone who's in comedy, and I was trying to get Ashley Ray into the space, but she has to go record a show. But I think what people are missing, and I've been tweeting this a lot, is the failed entertainer of it all. And like, I'm thinking of like, basically the equivalent is if somebody went to a comedy club and they were made fun of by a comic on stage, and they were like, you know what? Fuck this club. I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to get on stage and make fun of people, and they don't know how to run a comedy club, and they drive out all the other comics. Like, that's basically what happened. I think that, like, Elon is basically the equivalent of a failed producer. Like, he's a producer in Hollywood who is like, I don't want to be in the shadows. I want to be a director because I think that's easy. And because he isn't good enough to be a writer, like, or an actor. And so you have someone who, like, is trying to get the attention of everyone and be in the limelight. He's always bringing up comedy. He's not funny. He was on SNL for reasons that are still unknown. And I was pointing this out, and then someone said that, like, Ashley Ray pointed out that he did try to buy a bunch of Onion staffers and create a website called Thud that failed. And like, once you,
God. Right. Like,
yeah,
what's so crazy is like, why does the richest man in the world need to have the affirmation of also being like a comedian?
Because like, it's a job. How many of us have things that we're good at versus things we want to do? It's like one of those things where I think that he really thought he would be cool and he didn't really think it out. Like, you see this all the time in stand-up comedy with like open micers who don't know what they're doing. And he has the money to try to run a comedy club, but everyone's like, yo, they're like, no. And so, like, I really think the most powerful person in this whole scenario would be Lorne Michael coming out and being like, fuck you, you're not funny. And that would just end it.
That, the vision, the idea of him as like a guy blowing it at open mic is so perfect for what's going on.
I mean,
It's
we are
like,
so unequivocally clearly in the Elon flop era, right? It is crystal clear, and everyone knows it, but him and the people in the Musk Sachs room.
Well, I do think it's really fascinating to watch. I've been thinking a lot about like the beginnings of what we think of as Elon Musk, and I sort of date it to the "is life a simulation" thing, where all of a sudden he's like videos of him all over the internet doing like "I fucking love science" stuff with like shitty EDM backing music, and he became this like internet thing, and he convinced all these people. Where you still see people on Twitter be like, "He's the smartest man in the whole world."
Yeah,
And
he
he's
Ryan, are
basically wants
you?
to show us all. And the thing that's really gonna like shoot himself in the dick basically is that everyone who he wants the adulation of is going to be gone, and it's going to be these people who their only reason for being here is to piss off the people that Elon also likes, but they don't particularly like him. So then like he's lost his audience that he was trying to impress, and it's all these other unfunny people. But like real quickly before I get off, like circling back to Black Twitter, I think the thing about Black Twitter is that it's an actual like the intersection of different like groups. Like you have the Live Journal Black people, you have like a bunch of us came from like Google Reader, you know, you have academic Black Twitter, and it's like a bunch of us who are in other pods of Black life. I mean, it's not a monolith, who get to meet and like hang out in a cafeteria. And so I think we'll like go in our different directions, and then something's going to have to come up, and maybe we'll have to go back down to like blog roles and that kind of stuff and rebuild somewhere else eventually. But I think everyone is going to go back to their respective pods and then kind of find another cafeteria to hang out in. But also, this isn't our first white flight rodeo, so I don't know. I think we'll stay on a little longer. I don't know.
I mean, it's fun. I've like that. Like that comment about the kind of like flight, but also Liz, what you were talking about, where like this was an organizing space for people who you know who need to organize, who have like real reasons to get together and like deal with shit. Like that also flies in the face of like Elon Musk's like existence in a way, which is, I guess, like of course he wouldn't consider it valuable, right? Because like here we are, like literally he's got to lock the doors of Twitter because the workers have organized.
It's not just that, but if you look at the history of, like, for example, the lawsuits that Black workers at Tesla here in California, I live in LA, but like the Black workers at Tesla filed against that company because of the treatment, the racist treatment that they were getting there in terms of being called all sorts of racial slurs, on, you know, running the gamut in terms of what you can imagine as a hostile workplace based on anti-Blackness. That was what those lawsuits detailed. And so there is no love, clearly, for Black folks from Elon Musk or from the people that he puts into leadership positions. Silicon Valley as a whole, we know, is not friendly to Black people, right? So that, you know, the idea of we were able to make a space. And I'll come back to, I mentioned earlier about what happened in 2008 with the Obama campaign on Twitter and how powerful that was. And that was a space that really, for a lot of Black OG folks who came from blogs and then came onto Twitter, and we were able to, if you all remember the days of Jack and Jill politics, you know, those early days with Baratunde and all them, you know, and they had a thing where people would be out at, you know, Obama campaign events and would be tweeting it and would post on Jack and Jill Politics about what actually happened versus what the mainstream media was saying and reporting was actually happening. You know, because if you looked at the white dominated press, that was like Obama, everything was a disaster. But then you would, you know, look at Jack and Jill Politics and you would look at like the tweets from Black people and you saw a completely different story. And that pattern, you know, of being able to do that, everything that went down with Ferguson, everything that went, you know, Philando Castile's murder, you know, like everything that happened with George Floyd, you know, the fact that as painful as it is to see the videos of Black people, you know, trending on Twitter, you know, the hashtag of names, Sandra Bland, as painful as it was, I remember that damn near broke me to have to be the one Black person in my newsroom at the time and have to write about that story the minute that I saw it trending on Twitter, because I knew my editor was going to say, you know what, Liz, can you write that story? Because I'd be like, well, I'm the education editor.
They're like, well, we
you're the
need
black
help.
one.
Yeah, I mean,
Help.
we had a conversation
let me
about this
just say-
today. The Obama Foundation did their event on misinformation, right? And Nicole Hannah-Jones was sitting next to me talking about the new relationship that all journalists have with their audience, and that Twitter is the catalyst of this. And I think there's a straight line. One of the other, sort of communities I want to call out that I've learned probably more from than almost anybody
is furries.
That's second, is disability Twitter, right? And I think this is this thing where this is this community that had not been able to coalesce in this way, even in prior social media platforms before this, and it's had that same transformative effect. So I think these are the things where there is nobody left in Twitter Incorporated who's even got a basic fluency in this stuff.
So I have a question. Wait, hold on. I got a question because I got asked this the other day and I didn't know the answer, and we have a really great selection of people here who might have a better answer than I did. Do you feel like those moments or those communities could have been amplified the same way if they had used a platform like Facebook at the time?
No.
And why? Why do you think that? I don't know the answer myself, but why? Why do you think that?
So Twitter is one of the only platforms that has let disabled people. My name is Amani Barber, and I'm a disability advocate.
Welcome.
Thank you. And Twitter is one of the only platforms that allows disabled people to just be. Facebook in its early days was taking down content of disabled people and disabled people's bodies, saying it was lewd and inappropriate. There's also Instagram that in its paid content guidelines say you can't talk about disability unless it's uplifting and happy. And then you have TikTok, where every other day you're coming across a disabled person whose platform has been taken away for talking about disability too much. And Twitter really allowed disabled people in real time to connect with one another. In film and TV, we only represent about 3% of speaking parts, despite us representing 25% of the population. And Twitter has been the only place where we could actually organize and it work, and people listen to us. And I just think it's really weird to hear people making jokes about Twitter failing and Twitter collapsing when in the beginning of the pandemic, it's what kept us alive. If you remember in the early days of the pandemic, we were listening to Trump administration output on COVID-19, and there were no translators. There was no ASL translators. Disabled people in real time were offering resources to make sure that people who were deaf and hard of hearing could get information on COVID. There were such a lack of resources. We were sharing, where are we getting alcohol swabs for our durable medical equipment? Where are we getting distilled water? Where are we getting all these resources? Because everything was out of stock. And so while Twitter seems like this place where a lot of bad things happen and quote unquote cancel culture happens, it quite literally has kept disabled people alive. And it has allowed us to partake in conversations that have been largely ignored by history. And I'm devastated to think of Twitter going, because our community does not look like it does anywhere else but on Twitter.
Well,
I know what you mean, that we've all been sort of laughing about the idea of oh, Twitter's gonna shut down, haha, the hell site, it's over, hooray, we're finally freed. But I think anyone who's still here till the very bitter end, I don't know, I think everyone kind of has a feeling to some degree that Twitter has been good for them, and some people way more than others, and Twitter has been very meaningful.
Two important things. So one, it seems like Elon Musk has landed and is currently talking to Dave Portnoy on Twitter. Great.
He's talking right now about how they just hit an all-time high in Twitter usage.
Should we invite him in?
By the way, I'm trying to bully him into joining the space. So if anybody wants to glom onto that, we should definitely bully him into joining the space.
Can I jump in about the disability stuff real quick?
One thing that is important though is to connect with something that John Herman said earlier about it might not be over until people are just posting hardcore pornography. Cardi B is now posting hardcore pornography on her feed.
Of her?
No, it just she
Oh.
found a random porn video and uploaded it. So we have reached
Incredible.
that stage of the breakdown, just to keep everyone updated.
I was wondering, along the lines of just how many people would have died if Twitter didn't exist between, let's just say, March 11th, and I'm just talking about in the US, March 11th, 2020, and like when vaccines were like widely available, like just right then and there, because you're looking at like masking guidelines in like mainstream media were not as, there wasn't as much discussion, people didn't know, and then like news would come down and you would see people pushing back against the CDC. People who were isolated and disabled, like mutual aid, being able in real time to go and like help people, get them food, get them money, get them their medicines, and pick those up for people who couldn't get out. Like looking at like people who were just like depressed or like really like hurting and possibly going to hurt themselves, like somebody could be there. And just like looking at all the different ways when vaccines came out, being able to like network and communicate and like, go here, there are vaccines here, if you can get here, we can get you here. All of this stuff that like saved lives.
Oh
like,
yeah, I mean,
it's so much.
In New York, there was the Vax Daddy who was, the person who was sort of tweeting where you could get a vaccine appointment before, any sort of government website was able to sort of be functional enough to do that. I mean, I think there's also sort of on the flip side, there's also how many people did anti-vaccine and misinformation stuff on Twitter kill.
Well, I think it's also important to note, like, there was a lot of different types of advocacy happening around the pandemic. A lot of people don't know this, but early in the pandemic, a lot of health and human services around the country, like the departments of health and human services, were pushing forward medical rationing guidelines around who got saved and who did not. And so in a lot of these guidelines, they were saying, if you have a disability, if you have a lesser chance of living, we're not going to waste resources to save you. I listened to videos or listened to audio of a man's wife recording his doctor saying, there's no point in saving you. You are a paraplegic. And the man starved and dehydrated to death. And so there was a lot of advocacy happening on a lot of different fronts regarding COVID. There were attorneys like coordinating with one another. There were disability public policy advocates that were creating like avenues to get resources to disabled people. And so while there were anti-vaxxers, which is also, by the way, based in ableism, there was a lot of disabled people genuinely offering resources to one another. And I can't help but think that outweighs a lot of the issues that happened, because there were a lot of disabled people reclaiming the narrative around COVID and making sure that our communities were safe.
I have a question. How much do you think the sort of like general idea of Twitter as a health site is actually because it's a social network unlike other social networks that doesn't try to like make it pleasant or cover things up with an algorithmic recommendation? It's just like a raw feed. Do you feel like maybe that's why it can be so stressful to be on it, but also so vital at the same time?
Yeah, so if you look at the timeline of an advocate named Liz Jackson, who runs the disabled list, one of the things that they talk about is like incongruous information. So if you are somebody who cannot log in on one day, that information is still going to exist for you on another day. It's not like, it makes it a little bit easier for people who have chronic illnesses, who have disabilities, to tap into information. And when it comes to health news and networking, it's incredibly helpful to a lot of disabled people to understand what their diagnoses are, because we're relaying in a very real way what it is like to have these certain diagnoses. And more people are coming to the conclusion, hey, I may have neurodivergence, or hey, I may have myelitic encephalitis, something like that. And so there's no sugarcoating it, which is so helpful in terms of the discourse around disability. And that's why a lot of people don't like it, because it's a disability narrative that completely confronts what you already know about disability.
What do you think about TikTok as a platform that for disability Twitter to? I mean, I guess I call everything like a Twitter, like it's a community, but like that seems like a place that already kind of exists for people to talk about this kind of stuff. Is that something that you can see functioning somewhat the same?
To a certain extent, but not quite. So TikTok relies a lot upon visibility to engage a conversation, and not every disabled person wants to be seen in order to be heard. And there's a lot of emphasis on showing faces, showing bodies.
Oh, trust me, I don't want to show my face. I'm balloons.
That's true. But I think the real problem with TikTok is the unreliability of its algorithms for people who are marginalized. And like I said before, there are tons of people who on TikTok have had their accounts taken away for talking about autism too much, or talking about disability too much, or have had their commenting limited for talking about disability, or defending themselves against racism even. I've seen somebody post screenshots of them being called the N-word on TikTok, and their account was taken down, not the person who posted it. So, like, those are huge issues that are happening with TikTok, and I think they keep it very mercurial, their content moderation guidelines very mercurial, to keep people on their toes so that they can basically wipe away anybody's platform that they want to at any time. So, yeah, disabled people can move to TikTok, but whether or not there's stability there is another question.
Yeah, I just want to mention, thank you, but that Elon Musk just tweeted a few minutes ago that this is, he said, we just hit another all-time high in Twitter usage. And I'd like to think it's us.
No, I mean, he's like suffering from this like extreme delusion that like people rage quitting and freaking out because Twitter seems to be dying and his employees are all like declining to work for him is engagement. And it's like very
I don't know.
temporary.
I honestly don't think that he's actually under that delusion. I think he's just doing a little bit.
Oh,
but
no,
I
you're
wanted
giving
to say
him way too much credit. You're giving him way too much credit. He's not doing a bit. If he was doing a bit, like that would mean that he actually got it, and I don't think he's getting it right now.
I want to invite, if there's anyone here who is currently or until tonight a Twitter employee, if you want to come up, just hit the request button. We would love to hear from you.
And I want to stress, we're trying to bully Elon Musk into joining this space. So
I would like but I want to be clear. If he joins it, we're not going to let him speak.
Well, no, we'll let him speak. No, we'll let him speak. I'd love to hear what he's thinking right now.
I think it'd be fun to say no, but fair enough.
Please let me say something to Elon.
Oh no, the only person who can talk to Elon Musk is Masturbate Log. That's right.
Yeah, he has to go just to Masturbate Log. No, I think I would like an airing of grievances where we all get to air some grievances. I mean, you know, I don't. Is that even worth? That's not worth anything. Like he doesn't care, or that's sort of I don't know. It's a fool's errand, right?
Maybe you could be right. You could be right.
Yeah.
Can I jump in and ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hey, Katie, thanks for letting me up here. I saw this and it looks so interesting, and there's so many really serious journalism thinkers. You guys are. There are some amazing people in the room. There's Emily Bell at the Tower Centre and Kelsey at ONA, and Kevin Reese is here. Hank Green was here for a while. Yeah, I know. I don't know if he's still here. And I wonder if it's because some of I know it's 11 o'clock at night where you guys are, so maybe it's wine o'clock there, but it's such a useful opportunity for a platform that might not be here next week for those of us that identify as journalists to talk about what does the next platform, whether it's this one, if it, struggles on, or it's something else, what does it need to deliver to those of us who identify as journalists? And just, I was on a call earlier with a friend who's a journalist from originally from Myanmar, and he's now working in Singapore. And he said, this is how all the activists keep in touch. This is how all of the, the journalists in exile keep across this stuff. So it is pretty serious.
I just got
so if we do take that opportunity to think about what do we need from a platform as journos. Thanks.
I just got a similar message from a journalist in Thailand who was telling me that the activists there are all freaking out because you have to be anonymous when you have political conversations, and Twitter is a very useful platform for that. So
100%. And I know it's kind of funny to talk about breaking it with a GIF, but it might not be here in a week. So this is a really unique space to have that conversation if we can.
What's also interesting about Twitter, and I'm sure a lot of the people in this listening in this space have had this experience where yes, there's a lot of media people, a lot of journalists on Twitter, but also there's a lot of people who aren't. And the friction that is caused with that is obviously sometimes crazy because you have like all those instances of like journalists flooding someone's mentions during a breaking news event. But we sort of take it for granted now that there's this much access between the two camps. And like,
Yeah.
I am also very curious, like, how do you recreate that on like Reddit or something? Like, you really can't.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I've been thinking about is, so I have just downloaded my Twitter archive, but I'm thinking, how would I export my lists, for example? So, whatever platform it is, it's got to have some kind of way of listing people and grouping them together so you can use that for news gathering. I was just thinking about these sorts of qualities of a platform that we rely on so much for getting information, as you say, because we can connect directly. And maybe even more than distribution. Twitter's not really a distribution platform.
I mean, isn't the biggest thing just that you have to have the exact kind of sort of context collapse that makes this place also very miserable, or that subjects different people to, awful stuff? It's like the same sort of thing that allows you to see or have people, kind of like thrown into your space who are wonderful or who are interesting. I don't know. I feel like there's like this, like the whole live news thing is aided by the fact that it's also like extremely voyeuristic, and it's like a place where people are being kind of like rocketed into your timeline who you may not know. And I feel like I've just been thinking a lot lately about the fact that like every single thing that makes Twitter awful is the thing that makes it great, right? It's like so difficult to like untie that. And like I don't know that like any space that would like succeed it would also have to probably have those things in order to be as useful, especially to like journalists or academics or people who are trying to do that kind of work.
I think there was the opportunity to head in that direction. Certainly the tool was there with Twitter communities, for example. So you have these kind of walled off gardens of spaces where you go, okay, well, I know who's in here and I'll get kicked out if I'm a doof. So there was that, but I don't know that people have really been terribly well aware that it existed at all. And maybe the closest thing to it is a closed Facebook group, for example, or a closed LinkedIn group. So yeah, I agree. I think that kind of quality needs to be there. I don't want to dominate. I'm just, there's lots of really interesting speakers in the room, but that was just a question I had was, what does it need for us? It's got to work.
Well, it's true. We have, as always, we have Masturbate Log on here, and
yes, thank you.
This is an account that
I love it.
Masturbate Log. Just
you're
for
like
people who joined a little bit later, can you describe?
Oh,
what you
Katie,
do on
we
your
have a
Twitter
lot of
account?
people now. This is just getting cruel.
Yeah, hey. So for all of the significant media folks who are now a part of this, since 2013, I have tweeted every time I checked off.
See, here's the thing: is that's worth $44 billion, right? That's what Elon bought.
I will say your inclusion of Masturbate Log, which is like so fringe, really, in the grand scheme of Twitter, is a great example of the pockets of communities that exist on Twitter. Like, Katie, your Twitter is very specific. I mean, you are one of the original people on the internet, in my opinion. Like, you have a lineage of being on the internet in a way that a lot of, I don't know, like, it's like, to me, it's iconic. It's also, I guess, maybe affected by the fact that we're related in some way.
Wow, I love that you're calling me iconic. Speaking of
you're an iconic internet user, but your internet is different than like a lot of the conversations that we've just heard in the last like hour or so. It's people talking about their internet, and I think like Twitter is like an expression of the ability to have those like not private, but like agreed upon spaces and ways of communicating that. It kind of like, it's really a bummer to think about like Elon Musk just like unilaterally fucking it up for no apparent reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that one of the beautiful things about there being these sort of communities on Twitter is that it gives people, we were talking about Black Twitter, talking about disability Twitter. It gives people in those communities a chance to, or someone was talking about college football Twitter. It gives people a chance to speak with other people in that community. It also gives people outside that community a chance to occasionally see it and, hear what those conversations are going on and have an awareness of, that there is a broad existence of humanity going on around them that they might not interact with every day.
Well, I think for disabled people especially, having Twitter was a way to like engage in actual space with non-disabled people, because space itself to us is a lot of times inaccessible. So especially at the beginning of the pandemic, when we had like Versus and all of these different events that were happening on Twitter in online spaces, disabled people were in those spaces in real time, being able to engage with communities that we're isolated from on a day-to-day basis.
Can I also make a request? If we have anyone who's listening to this that is outside of the U.S. and would like to share sort of how this is affecting their particular part of the internet, I'd love to hear it. I feel like the Twitter experience is also, it's so segmented by your community and your point of view and or Katie's mental problems, but also by where you are in the world and how like Twitter has integrated into your society. Like in America, Twitter runs certain sectors of our culture, but in the UK it runs others, or in Japan it's completely different. So yeah, anyone who's outside of the US, try to wave
I'm
a
in
flag.
Australia.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear more. I'd love to hear more people.
Just
But also,
really,
yeah.
Well,
quick
speaking of someone who's
check.
definitely
We're
not
about to cross 20,000. Just I want to say,
I want to just invite Dodai Stewart to speak, someone who's not outside the U.S. and in fact is extremely the most insular local. She's a writer at large at the New York Times Metro desk, so specifically just about New York City. But I'm curious what you think about the potential end of Twitter.
I just feel like, as you probably know, Katie, like I've been extremely online for like an extremely long time. And I think it's been one of the more, like pleasant and usable and often awful. But it's just, I mean, when I started at Jezebel, we were using Feedly to like look for voices and look for blogs, and we had all other kind of RSS feeds and readers, and I don't think anything has been as like useful to me as a writer and later as a journalist, but first as a blogger, than Twitter. It's just really like had insight into all different communities, being able to like reach out to people, and I don't know. I think, and I recognize that it's my own fault for being extremely online for an extremely long time.
No, I think that's something that we've been talking a little bit about, like, or everyone sort of has, about like Twitter has been important for journalists, and I think that like there's a sort of output that we think about that, like we tweet our articles, and that's how people will click on stuff. But there's actually a huge input factor, right? Like it is such an important sourcing tool. Like that's how you find out about a person who's doing an interesting thing. It's it's such an important resource for journalists.
Yeah, and I just think if you have like a very voracious appetite for whatever the things are, like all kinds of culture things, people living extremely unique experiences, bird Twitter. I'm lurking in birder Twitter. And I think, and like, of course, I was also lurking in Black Twitter, and of course, I'm also in media Twitter, and there's all kinds of overlaps, romance novel Twitter, and I just think that the way to find those things previously was just so much harder, and I think Tumblr is not a good substitute, and neither is an RSS feed.
I want to invite Will Aramis to speak. What do you think about the end of Twitter? And also just to make sure that you understand that you are on here with Masturbate Log.
Yeah.
In case you forgot. Yeah.
No, I couldn't forget, and that's what makes Twitter Twitter. I was gonna say that, like, All right, I'm a longtime veteran Mastodon user, by which I mean I've been on there for like 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks like everybody else. And the thing about Mastodon, like I think it actually can replace the interest-based part of Twitter. Like it can be the water cooler for your group of people, whether it's like journalists or like marine biologists or whatever the hell it is. But it doesn't have masturbate log, and it doesn't have like all, as Charlie said, like the stuff that makes Twitter bad is also what makes it good. What Mastodon's
Yeah,
missing is
but it
that
doesn't
bad
have it
stuff.
yet.
It doesn't
Yeah,
have it yet.
I'll make
Right,
a
Doesn't have it yet. I mean, it's so early. I mean, like you're talking about. Think about Twitter in the first few years. It didn't have masturbate log either. You know, he had to. There had to be an evolution to get to masturbate log.
Totally.
No,
Yeah.
I
So,
just got
I mean, so
horny.
Mastodon is where Twitter was like 10 years ago. Right. And so I'm not doubting Mastodon's potential. In fact, I think it's great. Like, let's all go over there and try to make that happen. But like the problem with Mastodon, the rap that it gets is that it's too complicated. But I think the actual problem with it is that it's like too earnest. It's like, it's not bad enough. There's not shit posting. There's not main characters. There's not pile-ons. And like, it just like a social network needs that element of danger in order to keep people coming back. And that's the part that needs to happen there.
You think people can't exist without pain? This is like a kind of the original Matrix concept where they made a perfect world where nobody felt pain or sadness and humans rejected it. Is that what you're suggesting?
This is totally my shit right here. Yes.
So it's just like we need to feel suffering for it to be a real website.
I think that's true. I think content should hurt if it's real, you know?
Yeah, it's
There
Has
should
there
be
ever been a
consequences
social
for
platform where
posts.
everything was like happy and good? And like I mean that like truly, like, Tumblr, might feel
Peach,
happy and good in some moments, but like we also know it's very, very bad,
peach,
Um
cool.
Great
but
site. Wait, I just added Cat B, a new speaker. Cat, do you have a question? How do you feel about Twitter dying?
Hey guys, yeah, so I actually wanted to join because you were asking about what the rest of the world is sort of how they're interpreting the meltdown of Twitter. I'm a journalist based in Tokyo, actually,
Oh, cool.
and it's sort of been a running joke for the past few days, at least among foreigners on Twitter in Japan, because it doesn't seem that Japanese Twitter is even talking about this. And when you actually ask that question, I went over to the trending tab to see what was actually trending in Japan. And let me tell you guys what the top trending topics in Japan today are. Number one is Pokemon.
Yep. Well, the new game's coming out in 20 minutes, so yeah.
Yeah.
It's so close.
Yeah. So people are more interested in that. It's also the end of the baseball season here too. So the second trending topic is talking about baseball trades. Number three is Nyanchu, who is like an entertainer on TV. He's like a public personality. The next couple trending topics are all about baseball. We have Happy Birthday Mickey Mouse as a trending topic. So basically nowhere in any of the trending topics we see in Japan have anything to do with the downfall of Twitter. We know that this could possibly be a result of the fact that the curation team was completely disseminated by Elon Musk. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a perspective of what's going on here. I will add, though, that Twitter has kind of been a niche platform in Japan pretty much ever since it's existed. Japanese social media is a strange thing to analyze from outside of Japan. They don't really use Western platforms in the way that we do. It's all very anonymous. And I see that people kind of use their Twitter as more like a personal like diary than any sort of like news gathering or news reporting tool. Journalists here do use it, but in a much different way that we as Western journalists are used to. So just thought I would provide some of that perspective, and thank you for hosting this. I see a lot of my real friends and a lot of people I've admired for a long time here, and I will miss you all.
Thank you. That was so fascinating. Thank you for coming on. That was awesome.
It's interesting that you are that the perspective in Japan is people are like, well, this is a kind of this nice little like, maybe I'll put some personal thoughts on there. Meanwhile, in America, journalists are like, my life is over if this thing shuts down. This is the end of everything I've built. it's like incredible that I mean we do have these like this tunnel vision on our experiences on this thing.
Kat can correct me or somebody else from Japan, but my understanding is that, like, Japan's actually Twitter's most successful market in some ways. Like, it has the highest penetration there of any of its big markets. And I think it's because it's not just for public figures there. Like, it's actually for normal people. Japan's like the only country where, like, normal people are on Twitter.
Yeah, I
Are you
think
saying
that's
we're not normal? What are you saying here, Will?
Yes.
That's correct.
no, I think that's entirely accurate. Celebrities are not on Twitter the way that they are in Western countries. Politicians do use Twitter. I mean, you'll see Prime Minister Kishida, he likes to tweet a lot. But it is really, I've never really thought about that. That's a really interesting perspective. But yeah, it is really more of a platform for the normies, as we would say.
Well, we've crossed into the 20,000 territory, and no sign of Elon so far.
And Cardi B has deleted the porn from her account.
Okay,
No.
I want to hear from Steph Solis.
Sup? I didn't really have much to add. I had more so a question. Just
is it for Masturbate Log?
No, but maybe it could be applicable to Masturbate Log.
Okay.
So, for those of you who have been on Mastodon for the 3 instead of 2 weeks, like, are you having an easier time finding people locally? Because, like, as a local reporter, I am like freaking out, even though obviously we don't just rely on things we see on Twitter for Boston related news. So I don't know. I know there are people like trying to figure out if there's a Boston contingency, and I have no idea how to even like get a server going. And I think there are wait lists now. So I don't know what, if anyone there is having more luck, if anyone else is having more luck with local stuff.
I think the difficulty with Mastodon right now is that it is really hard to first off, there aren't that many people on it. I mean, just in the grand scheme of things, like when you think about Twitter, it's like you could, there are so many people on it. It's easy to find kind of any corner of interest. But like, I think with Mastodon, the problem is, one, people are on it and it's hard to find people. There are some services that will like take your follower list and tell you who is on Mastodon, though it's not perfectly one-to-one. This, like, if you think about it, Twitter is so advanced, and your world in Twitter is so broad and expansive, and on Mastodon it's like 2007. Like, the setup's different. It's a better concept in a lot of ways, but the actual user base is like 2007.
That's not good.
No, I know. It's like, but the problem is like how do you get people to come over to something else? Like, I think Mastodon's really interesting, but how do you convince? But it's like, just like Twitter. I mean, in the early days, people were like, I don't care about Twitter, but eventually people did start to care about it, and it was because like, there's so many people in this conversation right now that if they started talking to other people on Mastodon, and again, I'm not getting paid by Mastodon. It's just an interesting new opportunity. Like, if the really smart, really interesting people that are on Twitter started to have those conversations on Mastodon, their audiences and their conversations and their followers would start to migrate over.
But it's also a question of infrastructure, right? Because you can there's so many CMSs that you can embed tweets in, and there's Data Miner, and there's CrowdTangle, and there's a whole accessories of infrastructure that's been built around Twitter by third parties that you don't have for other platforms.
Yeah.
Speaking of infrastructure, there's also a lack of accessibility. I don't know how Mastodon's going to work with screen readers. If there's alt text built in.
Yeah, no, it is actually built in. And in fact, Mastodon has considered the disability community more than any other social media service I've seen ever. Like, actually, foundationally, they are thinking from the ground up about how to address people who are not just whatever the mainstream is considered. I think there there's actually a lot of work from that community on the very platform that is building Mastodon. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's the next thing, but it is asking questions that Twitter did not ask. Like, for instance, their platform is built on the concept of consent. Like, what do you consent to? What do you want to see? Like, what will you allow in your space? Whereas Twitter is built on like almost a mobbing sort of reality where like it's very easy to take you as an individual there and like expose you to an audience you don't want to be part of and expose you to experiences you don't want to be part of. In some way, the lack of virality is a strength on that service. And again, I'm saying this as like, to Will's point, he was like 3 weeks and I'm 2 weeks, but I do think there's something like there could be another way that we have not explored. And that to me is interesting because it's been a long time since we've actually asked the question, like, is this the only social network or the only social concept that we can conceive of?
I wanna bring in Allegra here
Hey, Ryan.
because I'm sure she's got some very interesting thoughts about where communities are headed
Yeah.
at the moment.
I just, it's so funny. I just got home from an academic conference for the history of science, which is a fun little thing I do on the side, and going around and telling all these very sort of buttoned up scholars that I actually met, all of these cool people. I was at the conference because of Twitter, because of the academic side of Twitter. And once they learned that I, did these sort of internet community studies, everyone was sort of pressing me, oh, do you know what's going to happen with Twitter? What's going on? What do you think is going to happen? Because so many people in the academic community rely on Twitter for their their networking, their socialization, especially in these days when academics is so precarious. Ryan, I know you told me to talk about fandom, but this is sort of where my mind is at.
Go for it. We're like 3 hours into this.
my
It's
God.
almost midnight. Go
I'll
crazy.
go crazy. But academia is a community based on enthusiasm and based on passion, just like fandom is. So in a sense, they are experiencing the same exact anxiety that fan communities are. So there's a scholar named Casey Feisler at the University of Colorado with Brianna Dim, who I mentioned in the Garbage Day newsletter a couple weeks ago, and they've done a lot of really interesting work on platform migration, specifically looking at fandom, just because that's a sort of singular example where it's fairly easy to track the why and the how of where people are going during these sort of moments when platforms change and when they shift to the extent that people want to go somewhere else. What we're seeing right now on the fandom side of Twitter is obviously a lot of anxiety and a lot of sort of fear about if this platform is just truly irreplaceable for fandom communities as it feels like it is. So there's a sort of just like in every other community out there on Twitter right now, I would say it's fairly across the board the same reaction. The difference is that fandom has this sort of long communal memory where we remember what it was like to be on fandom for LiveJournal. We remember what it was like to be on fandom and Tumblr. So there's almost a sense of maybe the best thing to do right now is to retreat, not to Mastodon, not to these alternative new platforms, but to these old platforms, because it's almost like there's a comfort in that. So we're seeing a lot of people sort of organizing themselves on Tumblr. Again, Tumblr just went down for a couple minutes tonight because people were sort of retreating back there. People are heading back to Dreamwidth, which is a LiveJournal clone that's been running sort of simmering for the last 10 years. And, there's so much opportunity right now for social media websites where fandom had a home in the past to sort of rise up and become a home again for fandom. The only difference being they have to be flexible and to sort of know what the features are that Twitter had that users are used to and be able to sort of adapt to this return. So it's going to be very interesting to see these platforms take back perhaps some of the fandom energy that they had in the past, because they're still there, because there's this fondness, there's this emotional, fandom is all about emotion. There's this emotional connection to Tumblr. There's this emotional connection, Instagram, people do fandom on Instagram and TikTok, but we don't care. We just do it there because we have to. There's no other option. Twitter, I would say there's an emotional connection. Tumblr, certainly an emotional connection. LiveJournal and Dreamwidth too. There's a lot of emotion built in there. So it's just about who can do the job of capturing and making good that nostalgia. I think nostalgia is a huge factor here for fandom.
Well, speaking of capturing emotions, I just want to say that I'm having like a little bit of, I'm going to blame this on Elon, some technical trouble adding people who are requesting to join this chat. So if you have requested, but it's like not showing up, I apologize. There is some sort of wonky thing. There is a very nice male porn star, Jordy Massive, who has a lot of ideas that he wants to share. And I'm sorry, Jordy, I somehow cannot add you.
Oh,
But
Katie, so it's because there's a limit. So hold on, Allegra. Goodbye. I'm kicking you off.
All right,
Goodbye.
bye, Ryan.
Okay.
yeah.
Now let's hear from Jordy. Let's do it. Is it gonna work now?
Oh no, I cannot for the life of me get Jordy to come and share his perspective as a massive muscle daddy is
Okay,
what
while I figure this out, I would love to hear from Porqueas Tendecia, which, if I understand correctly, is an account that tracks what's trending on Twitter in Mexico. Is that correct?
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi, can you tell us a little bit about how Mexico is bracing for the Twitter apocalypse right now?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry if my English is not good enough. You see, I'm from Mexico. I'm living here and down here in Mexico. So yeah, sorry if I don't speak a good English. But yeah, the thing with our account is that we talk about trendings, right? Like, for example, you go to the trending page and you have some explanations there in the US, but we don't. So the deal with our account is to talk about them, right? Like Twitter Mexico doesn't do that work, so we do. And yeah, there's a lot of chaos down here. People are talking like, where are we going now? Can we share our Instagram profiles? Can we go to another social network or something? And so yeah, it's not just a US thing. I think it's kind of global. So yeah,
What's the thing that people are talking about as the next jumping off point, like a place that makes sense for that community?
well, I see a lot of people using Discord. Yeah, Discord is kind of another platform they're using. They're talking about Mastodon also, but it's not that popular down here, so maybe it's not an option, right? Um, Many of us kind of believe that Twitter is going to survive this chaos. So we are just doing memes and all that stuff, but I don't think they are actually kind of making plans to migrate to other platforms. So
So
yeah.
is it just like talk? It's just kind of panic talk, like given the chaos right now?
Yeah, panic talk and maybe a chance to share memes and get some followers here in Twitter, right? It's kind of ironic. I mean, like we all are kind of in panic for this, but we come here to Twitter to talk about it. It's like I don't know, like Twitter's dying, and now we come to Twitter to talk about Twitter dying, and
Well,
it's
it's like Twitter dying is like a weirdly communal thing. Like it actually feels like, I mean, even this, like I was saying before when I started, I wasn't in a space maybe ever, and
yeah.
I was like, oh, I want to join this because it feels like things are reaching this weird point of inflection, and where else can you talk about it? Like where else where people understand, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. Actually, we made a tweet kind of taking part of everything here. Like, hey guys, if Twitter dies, we are thankful for following us and all of that stuff. And people were like, so where are you going now? Like, where can you talk about trendings? Where can you keep that work, right? So it's like Twitter is the place. Twitter is the platform for us. So yeah, I don't think we are actually thinking about moving
Do,
here in Mexico. Yeah.
how important? I sort of know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, how important has Twitter been for social movements and sort of like getting certain kinds of news stories to circulate in Mexico?
Well, you see, actually, that's a nice question. Here in Mexico, Twitter is kind of a big deal. Um, you see, there's a lot of media around there. But I like that lately the media is looking at Twitter for some stuff, right? It's like we were used to receive stuff from the media, but now we are talking the other way around through Twitter. So, I mean, here in Mexico, there's a lot of social movements, and Twitter takes a big piece of that. Actually, there's every morning the president of Mexico have a talk in the mornings every day, and he talks a lot about what's happening on Twitter. And he's actually like a tweet star here, right? Some people hate him, some people love him, but the thing is that Twitter is kind of the place where people actually talks about politics and all that stuff. Facebook is not that used in here for that thing, for that matter. But yeah,
Do
I
you
mean,
think do you think Elon Musk cares? Like, do you get the impression that he's thinking about like what's happening with Twitter outside of where he lives, like where you live?
that's actually a good question. A few days ago, it was actually a trending topic. The thing that all the office of Twitter Mexico were fired. Like, we used to have some employees working for Twitter in Mexico, but they are fired. They're gone now. So
That's
I
crazy.
don't know. I don't think that Elon Musk is thinking about other countries right now.
I mean,
Maybe,
that's nuts though, right? Because like there's
yeah,
hundreds of millions of people. It's not just like California, right? It's not just like
yeah,
America. And you're talking about it like it's a utility in a way, like you need this or you use it in a meaningful way. Like the president, you're saying like the president uses it, and your impression is he doesn't care at all about that.
yeah. Not right now.
Wow.
Mhm.
How you doing, Katie?
I'm good. There is someone who just joined who has an anime avatar, and obviously
No,
I
they're
wanted to
gone.
give them.
They
Oh,
disappeared. I was so
Was
oh
it Elon? Was
excited.
it
goodness.
Elon Musk?
I think it was Grimes.
It might have been. It might have been.
No.
That was
Wait,
her.
Grimes, come
Wait,
back. We
hold
got to
on.
hear from you.
We have Monica raising her hand here. Hi, Monica.
Hey Ryan, hi Katie. My name might be Monica, but I'm actually from India, and I haven't heard this. That's why I wanted to bring this up. But what about professional Twitter? So I'm from the fintech and payments community. We talk about fintech and payments here, and I think I'm going to really miss it if Twitter goes down because since the last, I think, 8 to 9 years, the number of people who talk about this particular subject and the number of people I've been able to interact without ever visiting the United States has been massive, and that is thanks only to Twitter. We have influencer communities, we have knowledge based communities, speaker panels, women being represented, marginalized communities being represented, and being asked for, all happening on Twitter. And because COVID happened, we actually had people joining from across the world in conferences which were held in different countries they never ever visited, all thanks to Twitter, because the requests to get women speakers who were representing different kind of audiences all happened via Twitter. So I'm actually heartbroken because what this would mean would be two things. Number one, we wouldn't be able to get direct interaction with people who are like-minded like us and use this to follow particular technical topics. And second, the access that it creates to wider communities, which is impossible if you're doing this in a local way. India does have its own platform right now, which has about 15 to 20 million users. And having said that, while it's obviously growing, it's going to be very localized. But we need India on the global roadmap, right? And on the global map. So without that, I'm not sure how this will survive. And as far as Twitter in India is concerned, I don't know whether I'm sure I see a lot of my own friends who are here. Everybody is on Twitter. Specifically, it's not just about the news, it's about the families, the relationships, the kind of camaraderie that's there. And a case in point was COVID. When the second wave was happening, including actually the first wave of COVID in India, the amount of support that India got from global community and people reaching out to each other, helping out with oxygen, with hospitals, it was unprecedented. So I don't think this is possible without a global community such as Twitter out here. So just wanted to put it out there. It's going to be a massive, massive miss for us.
I see Lisa raising her hand here. Lisa, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so I'm in South Africa, and so we're all dealing with like this secondhand embarrassment about Elon Musk.
Oh man, yes. All right, spill.
Yeah, I want to
Tell
know about
us
that. What?
everything.
Tell us
Yeah,
about the local vibe.
Yeah, I gotta
So
know.
yeah, so I mean, it's really funny because people have kind of largely disowned him. Like it's quite a strange setup. He's seen very much as like a local boy gone bad, even though he's completely disowned his South African connection. So it's quite a strange setup. But just in general, I mean, Twitter here is, I mean, it's huge, but it's huge amongst quite a small sort of sector of society, really. And similar to Mexico, it's very much used for like a lot of social movement stuff. And things like that. And what's been really, really fascinating for me, I mean, I work for the Web Foundation, and I've worked in comms for a long time. And so I sort of like seeing how people engage with information and seeing how people engage with community has been kind of something I've done for a very long time. And it's been fascinating to see the sort of resistance to leaving, because what happens, I suppose, with something like Twitter or any sort of social platform, especially a platform which is used, like any platform, like people who don't, I think people who are on this call, who are caring about this thing from a certain sort of point of view, we are very aware of the platform. But for a lot of people, the platform is very invisible. It's just a means to an end. The platform itself is completely anonymous. It's completely invisible. And familiarity with a platform creates invisibility. It creates a kind of seamless experience. So I'm fascinated by this idea that people would leave it because, the difference between a platform which is invisible because you're familiar with it and a platform you have to work out, and something which is a conscious effort. Like I've gone to Mastodon, I can't work some of it out, and it's driving me crazy. And it's changing the way people relate to information when you change the platform. And so I just kind of see the sadness is not necessarily about losing Twitter, but it's about forcing people into a space where they have to physically manipulate and work out a new way of doing things. And what that does for community, and what that does for social movements, and how that puts blocks and barriers in the way of it. And it was also mentioned that so much architecture and infrastructure has been built around Twitter and has been built around this kind of thing, because it is a seamless thing for people who are familiar with Twitter as they are with other platforms. It's a seamless experience, and asking people to move somewhere else, the resistance is so high. And in South Africa, where I mean, it's so funny because the people who are joking about Elon Musk, or the people who are also moving to Mastodon, there's a very, very small subset of people. And I'm just very sad that the kind of community and the kind of community that's built around Twitter. I mean, our president had his birthday yesterday and shared it on Twitter, and everyone was tweeting for the president and stuff. And then there were all these jokes because the president was tweeting around his birthday. And if you Google, listen to me, if you looked up the tweets around the president's birthday, there were news articles around the president and some dodgy corruption sort of stuff. And there's jokes around that, and there's like a kind of seamless experience, and a sort of, it becomes a vernacular. And yeah, I just think it's sad that the vernacular will be lost, and if it all goes to pieces. But the reality is, I honestly think that most people here just don't think it will happen. Most people aren't moving because they don't think it will happen. I think there's an optimism that something so big can't fall, that something so big will ultimately find its way. And maybe it's our history, maybe we're used to that here, but yeah, it's just a mess.
So here's a question I have, because it's come up a few times tonight. Monica brought it up. We talked about it when we were talking about disability Twitter. There's this sense that it feels like COVID was a huge moment for our relationship with Twitter. And I guess like the question I have for anyone who's got speaker access right now, like, do you feel like we came out of COVID not quite really realizing how much we now rely on Twitter?
Can I've been thinking just a lot about how COVID sort of shows the exact, like, what makes Twitter wonderful and what makes it awful. Like early COVID times, it was like the amount of public health professionals who came on here and really like helped give knowledge to people and helped like understand like the national and global like picture of what was going on with COVID at a time when like everyone was just absolutely terrified and trying to like latch onto some piece of actionable information. Like that was truly sort of just from an informational standpoint, like what like one of the better moments of the platform that I can remember. And then what I think was so interesting about it is you had all these people. I have like a good friend who's an infectious disease doctor who like kind of went viral early on and then like got asked to be on like TV shows and do all this stuff and like it like blew up and then sort of speed ran the entirety of what like journalists, activists, all sorts of people on Twitter have to deal with, whereas just like their stuff got taken out of context, they became embroiled in these culture war battles. They burned out. It became terrible. They were harassed off the platform. And it was like, I've been thinking about COVID as this moment that it was just like, I mean, it has changed a lot of people's relationships. I'm not really answering the question, but I just think it's like, it really kind of like fundamentally shows what like modern Twitter is, right? It's this thing
Wait.
that is great and awful.
Before we get too far away from this, Masturbate Log, did it change your relationship with cranking it? Did COVID have an effect on that?
Wait. Before we get to Masturbate Log's thoughts on that, Taylor Lorenz is here, who, in terms of what Charlie was just talking about, has a front row seat to it. I'd like to hear her thoughts on what's happening right now.
I'm
Not that I
sorry,
don't want to
Josh.
hear
I
from
can't.
Masturbate
I
Log,
can't
but
let you cut off Masturbate Log.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hang on. To be quite frank, I would
Okay.
always defer to Taylor.
Really?
I think she has something important to say.
Oh God, don't hype me up too much. I mean, I just agree with everything Charlie was saying, that it was, I think like as a real-time news information source, Twitter is irreplaceable. I know so many people have talked more eloquently about the disability community. I'm, as a lot of people know, extremely immunocompromised, and I don't know how I would get up-to-date information about anything without Twitter, just in terms of like keeping myself safe on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I think it's bad. I don't know. Do you guys really think it's gonna like go down tomorrow? I guess I'm wondering like.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Everybody kind of is in like disbelief of the idea that it could fail, right? Like I think that's the.
I found Brian to be the best argument of the night. I kind of agree with him, which was just like it's not going to go down immediately. It's just going to sort of fall apart over the next 6 months.
Like a human body, basically, at the end of life.
Yeah, like my body after 4 hours of Twitter space. Yeah.
Brian, do you want to speak on that topic?
Was I saying this?
No, wait. Oh, wait. Is Feldman in here?
Yeah, that's Feldman.
He's here.
Oh,
right
I wasn't talking about Feldman.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, Feldman can speak too. Yeah, sure.
I mean,
speaking as a human body that's broken down.
Yeah,
Brian?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm pretty chill about this whole thing. If you haven't like signed up for an RSS reader, just do that.
I mean, RSS was a technology. I want to just stress this. Invented in like I want to say 1996. I could be wrong. The inventor of RSS could log on to this at any moment because he's definitely on Twitter. But like what you're talking about has nothing to do with communities. Like RSS is a one-way street. It is like
I have to say, Brian, out of all the things I've heard, don't stress about Twitter, just sign up for an RSS reader, has got to be one of the stupidest.
No, it's like you're talking about like.
And Brian, you have to keep in mind that I've been speaking for almost 3 hours tonight with a guy who just tweets every time he cranks off, and that's exclusively what his
RSS feed of masturbating, and like Brian, you gotta.
If you want me to go on a larger tangent, I can. But the internet is big, and it's fun
Brian, no
sort
rush.
of get out there and look at it. And Twitter's going down, maybe, or maybe it's not. But you can find a bunch of news sites with a bunch of other freaks on it.
Yeah, but okay, Brian, that's great stuff. But let's get back to Taylor. Taylor, can you speak a little bit more? Taylor, let's talk more about, I mean, you've been a victim of insane harassment on Twitter, but like, do you still feel like you'd be sad if Twitter went away?
Yes, I would be so sad. I'm a sicko and I love it here. And I mean, I agree. Like I've been on Mastodon a bunch. I have like 40 something thousand followers on there, but it's not the
Okay, don't
same.
brag. There's no need to brag right now.
No
Okay, we
flex.
get it. Like,
No, but
And
I'm
are
just
that's
saying.
you might be the most popular person on
I mean,
Mastodon
that's a lot of
since
people on Mastodon. That's like you and the guy who founded it. But fine. Okay, moving on
No,
from
but I'm
that.
just saying,
But
like,
you were
I mean that I've achieved like a somewhat enough of a scale where I feel like it's comparable. Like I'm not posting to the void on there, but it sucks because it's so polite and it's so filtered. And I love the weird stuff on Twitter. I don't know if it can be replicated on there. People seem very
I mean, you're
averse.
saying, sorry, Taylor, I'm sorry. Like, I'm like blown away by this statement because you're like, wow, I hate it when people are nice because I prefer to be targeted by violent extremists who want to
No.
destroy my life on Twitter. Like, is that what I'm hearing?
No, I mean, I obviously I'm like super against, harassment and stalking and doxing, but I've always said that like, I like the messiness of it. I love the internet. I love all the weird stuff. I love the drama. That's what I love about TikTok too. I think it has a lot of that like messiness of Twitter. I love arguing with people and fighting with people and starting shit, when you're in the mood to do that. Like I don't want to lose that. I think I mean, look, Twitter is horrible about harassment. I think they should do a lot to like make it a better place, but I don't ever want a sanitized environment. I wouldn't be on the internet all day. And I just feel like Mastodon is it's too sanitized right now. And it's hard to find things. Like people were talking about the search, the servers. It's just not the same.
Taylor, what do you think about TikTok as a place for people to? I mean, it is sort of it. In many ways, it has replaced Twitter
Yeah.
already, and sort of like that's where like culture's happening and like the new thing, and that's where the new memes come out of. It's like their Twitter finds them a couple days later, but it's
but
still a very it's a very different place.
I think it's very similar. I mean, I think like TikTok is basically like the combination of Twitter and YouTube drama channel culture. But I think increasingly also, Katie, like TikTok is the place, say you saw something crazy or you saw police violence or you saw something insane and you want to like post it in a way that people can witness or get attention on it. Like you're going to post it on TikTok. You're probably going to post it on TikTok before Twitter now, but I think 5 years ago you would have posted on Twitter. I think TikTok is just like the public square in the way that Twitter used to be. But it's sad.
Is there a bigger fear though of like particularly police violence? Like is TikTok a platform that you can share that kind of content on and trust that it'll stay there and won't be taken down for some reason?
Yeah, I mean, definitely less so than Twitter. I think Twitter had such a like great policy of not removing like certain obviously it's like there's harmful content on here, but they don't censor it as much. I mean, look, TikTok doesn't censor as much as Instagram, but it certainly does remove some stuff. I mean, during the Black Lives Matter protest, there was a bunch of like violent police videos and stuff that got tens of millions of views. But I think the anonymity, like it sucks because there's not as much anonymity on there. And that's like, Ryan, you were making that point earlier, like a big loss, because I think we need anonymous spaces.
Oh yeah, and sort of like weirdly, ironically, like Twitter Blue and this quest for verification kind of killed the equilibrium that was making Twitter interesting, which was like pseudonymous and anonymous accounts telling verified accounts to like eat their ass. And like that's sort of what made Twitter special. And if you like screw with that balance, you don't get the serendipity, you don't get the magic spark. I don't think.
Speaking of magic spark, I wanna hear from Sarah Jong.
Hey, what's up?
What do you think about Twitter perhaps being someone going into the last server room and just sort of like sort of what do they call it, Ryan, in the pit where you're dancing?
The mosh pit?
Yeah, is there a name for it? Just doing that. Windmilling around, just pulling all the cords out, and that's it. It's over.
I mean, I've had a great time on here. I've also famously not had a great time on here. I thought what Taylor said about Mastodon was really interesting. I feel like we're just sort of dancing around this. I joined back in 2017 and wrote one of the first articles about Mastodon, and I haven't logged back in since 2017. It was just a little quiet, but I think that the thing that actually bugged me about it was that it was the quietness, the politeness, all of that stuff. It was let's see how to put this in a way that's not going to land me in hot water.
Was it boring?
No, it's white coated respectability is what it was.
Mm.
Like it was a place where people were getting penalized for not putting news stories about, for instance, like Black Lives Matter or police shootings behind content warnings. Like it was a place where people were like, oh, you're triggering me because you're talking about the president. And it would be like people talking about, for instance, like an ICE raid or like whatever fuckery was happening at the border. And like it was very much, this is where everyone goes for their digital white flight. It makes for like, it's not fun.
But
That's not a space anyone wants to go to.
But isn't that like because like there aren't enough people there? Like there aren't enough other people, like just like people who are not just whoever the core Mastodon founding partners are. I mean, like, Twitter was like that too at the beginning.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, so this was my problem with it in 2017. And now we're hearing from Taylor, who has 40,000 followers and is on Mastodon in 2022 and is reporting back a lot of the same things that turned me off at the beginning. And for one thing, I'm happy for the Mastodon people because it means that sort of the culture and the norms that they've established have carried through. That's like a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to achieve. And to be able to keep your community intact that way, that's like, it's actually something to be proud of. That said, it might not be the space for me. It's not quite the right mix of things for me. And maybe you don't want to go and break those norms, because if you broke those norms, you wouldn't have Mastodon anymore. You'd have some other shit, and it probably wouldn't be very good either.
I want to hear from Kofi.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
All right, awesome. So yeah, this is Kofi. I'm speaking from Ghana, Accra, Ghana. So this is actually where the Twitter Africa office was before I got shut down unceremoniously a few weeks, which feel like months ago. So I had the opportunity to speak to a few of the employees there. Just total pandemonium. They did get laid off, but there was like an agreement where they were going to get these really healthy severance packages and so on. So the person I was talking to was laughing the entire time, saying he couldn't believe Elon was so kind as to dismiss them so harshly so quickly, because it actually ended up better for them. So they have tons of they have a great parachute with which to land on something else. But just a few things about Twitter in Ghana. The Ghana office being closed down didn't make much of a news splash at all, which is kind of surprising. The other thing is that Twitter influences mainstream media here, but somewhat invisibly, right? Because the nickname that was given the Ghanaian president, for example, ended up on placards during a protest and then ended up on TV and radio. But nobody's really talking about sort of where that conversation started. So I do think we will see a reduction in kind of your everyday Ghanaians' ability to make their voice heard on popular or mainstream media. There also has been lots of LGBTQ activism on Twitter Ghana, but that's also been a very small set of the already very small subset of Ghana's very online urban community, right? So the trending topics, for example, today, are about Ghana's soccer win against Switzerland, Nigeria's loss against, Portugal on football. So most people in Ghana, I would say, will probably move on fairly seamlessly to some other platform. Like Mastodon might be something else. There'll be something lost, but it just won't be felt, I think, quite as acutely as you guys are feeling in the US. Yeah.
What do you think would be the potential successor platform for Ghana? Would it be something different than Mastodon or TikTok, like we were talking about?
Honestly, I think it's maybe too early to tell. I've been trying to join Mastodon and find some Ghana-related servers over there. There's nothing there now, not even Africa-related. I can't find anything. But I also do know Ghana has been very fragmented in a number of ways. I mean, for example, WhatsApp, of course, is sort of the leading peer-to-peer chat platform, but Telegram, for example, has done extremely well here as well. So I'm not quite sure what will lead and whether we'll necessarily follow the US or the rest of the world. We'll just kind of have to wait and find out.
I was excited because we just had a furry enter this space, and
Oh yes.
I would like to hear
Hell yes.
from Maned Wolfie.
Hi, Katie. Oh my goodness. Bark.
Welcome.
Yiff yiff.
Hell yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
How is the furry community reacting to the crisis right now?
I think like honestly, a lot of artists are really scared. People who like use this as like a business, and like people are scared that it's gonna go away, and that like their business is gonna die almost, because a lot of artists and fursuit makers and all these amazing talented people like use Twitter as a business. They use it as a way to, you know, promote their content and all this stuff. And like I do mine as well, but I don't do it for any kind of monetary gain or anything like that. So it's more for them. Like they've been speaking, you know, very loudly about it for sure.
What do you think now? I feel like, you know, Twitter has always had a lot of furries, but furries are also like, they've always been you know, they're since the dawn of time on any sort of internet platform. Like I noticed that
they're like the truffle pigs of social media. Like you guys
Yeah,
know where we're going next.
I noticed when I went to sign up for Mastodon, you know, you sort of go to the, you know, sign up page. It gives you a couple different, you know, options of like regional or programming or gaming kind of things, and they're fairly limited. And then the other category you can join is just furries. And I was like, of course it's furries. Furries are always there first. Do you think that the furry community has somewhere else to go? Just for affinity?
Honestly, yeah. Like there's other social medias, like you said, like there's TikTok, or like what was said before, there's TikTok and there's Mastodon. People are migrating to Mastodon, I guess, to try to build something there in case Twitter goes away. But I don't like personally, like I don't think Twitter is gonna go away in any sense for quite a while. Like there's a lot of things happening right now, and I don't know. I think it's too early to call that.
Wait, I have a weird question.
Sure.
Are you
Hi, Ryan.
Are you the cum pizza furry?
Yeah, I was pretty sure maybe you were.
Yeah, I did a pizza party at BLFC.
Aren't you like a notorious like furry troll? I'm getting messages right now from other furries being like, "You let this guy, yeah, you let them on."
Yeah, I mean, like I did an event for. I mean, like honestly, it was for friends, and yeah, we came on a pizza. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so wait a second. Sorry, I got to confer with Ryan a little bit, because Ryan, I'm trying to remember, is this a good furry or a bad furry? I can't remember the full context.
Okay, so there's a furry room in my Discord, and they're very disappointed that we let this furry on.
Okay, yeah, I had a feeling. I think this is one of the bad furries.
I agree. I can't believe this furry's
I
talking
think
right
my
now.
memory was that
I'm
there
so
was
happy
something
right now.
there was so after the pizza incident, there was something where he was there was a photo of him with another guy.
There's a couple.
He was God, sorry, it was people
By the way, this is the culture. Here it is.
There
This
was
is
a
the
case
culture
of
of Twitter that we're
misinformation.
losing.
There was a rumor that this furry who's been talking had been sleeping with a domestic terrorist.
Right. Okay. So John Wolf, before we kick you off, real quick, where are you gonna go when Twitter goes down?
He's going to Domino's. Because I think you're the bad furry.
Yeah,
his phone has been lost.
We gotta kick you off. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got.
Unfortunately,
okay. All right.
We invite up any good furries. I'm really sorry. Lisa has had her hand up. Lisa,
Hi.
I'd love to hear from you.
Sorry, I know. Sorry, it's a lot less exciting than furries. I'm so sorry, but just to say as well that I'm just thinking of like a while back, someone mentioned alternative TikTok, like TikTok as an alternative platform and stuff. And just to say that I think it's also a very sort of northern Western centric kind of conversation sometimes around these things, because in some parts of the world. And in some contexts, obviously, one of the things that you have to think about, which you don't have to think about in like the States, or in Canada, or in most of Europe, is things like the costs of data or data, whatever accent, and things like that. And video platforms are just really expensive for a lot of people. So Twitter is actually a great leveler in terms of access to information, because it is obviously a text-led platform, and it's a sort of small cost data-wise, and so it's easy to access for a lot of people. Things like TikTok are just a lot more expensive. They're a lot more inaccessible to a lot of people who need sort of daily information, who need daily interaction. So I think that's just something to consider when one thinks about alternative platforms. And already, like with Mastodon, like, you know, when there was all those issues when the servers were slow, like a lot of people, like in my part of the world, they didn't know if it was slow because it was their connection that was slow, or if it was slow because like the servers were, you know, you just don't know. So I think that's one of the issues. And I think also, I know you spoke to the guy in Ghana, and in terms of like Anglophone platforms, I mean, for most of the world, I think Anglophone platforms mirror what you see in the States and Europe. But yeah, I just think it's another consideration around access that people often forget and leave out of the conversation when you're talking about a global platform, and global people who access it.
I think that I agree.
Yeah, I'm still sort of reeling from the furry thing, but that was
I
very
know.
good. Yeah,
And I'm
and
so sorry.
no. Thank you for doing that, because I was glitching out a little bit. We have some speakers with their hands up. I'd love to swing through. Shefali, is you write for Mint, right? I'm a fan.
That's correct. Thank you so much. This is Shefali. You can call me Chef. I am a tech reporter from India. I write on creator economy and internet culture. I just thought I'll take the room through some of the things that have been happening on Twitter in India. In one word, it's tragicomic, which is how Twitter in India has always been. It's tragic and comic all at once. Political fights continue to go on. Things continue to sort of take a communal turn when they shouldn't, and so that sort of continues to happen. But interestingly, there is an Indian alternative to Twitter, which is called Koo, K-O-O. And very recently, they kind of announced that they're going to branch out and sort of, try and have a presence in international markets as well. And over the last 12 hours, we have seen a random account with followers in single digits kind of promoting a news item around Koo, which says that they are set to become the second largest microblogging platform, which I think is interesting. I think there are quite a few conversations around how people are not able to archive their tweets or their data on Twitter, but I guess that's more of a global thing and not just Indian. I also wanted to sort of talk about how, within India as well during COVID, how Twitter had been instrumental in India, specifically during the second wave, and continues to be, because as some of the people here would agree, COVID is not over yet. It changed people over here. I know people from political as well as financial backgrounds with hundreds of thousands of followers who kind of see all of their DMs and immediately are sort of quick to respond and share their numbers because they've seen what last year was like here, and they really want to kind of reach out and help people. So yeah, that's what's happening over here. I believe you already know that 80% of the India office has kind of been laid off. So that's on the official front. Thank you.
I don't know off the top of my head, but so 80% of the India office, and then also we heard that the Ghana office. I have to imagine that many of the international offices are gone, and I don't know. I wish I could be like, I'm a reporter who has the answer to this. Here's how many of the international offices were affected, but I have to imagine it was a large amount.
It's 80% of the Indian workforce. In fact, because I am actually embroiled in a legal defamation case where I am a defendant, and so is Twitter. So I know that the Twitter legal has also kind of moved to California. So now the affidavits and the replies come from California and not the India representative.
That sounds like it's a dicey situation.
You bet.
Liz, you have your hand up.
Yeah, one, I just want to say, real quick, just thanks to you all for hosting the space. I mean, it was cathartic to say the least. But, I just listening to, Lisa in South Africa and Kofi in Ghana and, our sisters in India, I just found myself thinking about how lucky we have been to basically have this reminder that we exist in a global society, and what is happening here with, Twitter and the decisions of one person has these ripple effects across it. And, I reminded Janetta Elzy was on. I saw her avatar a little bit earlier, and I found myself thinking about uh, following her Twitter handle through the Ferguson uprising, and the bravery that that young woman showed on the ground, and just marveling at it, and um, and being able to see, as much as DeRay drove some people crazy, in some ways, knowing every day when I got up and there would be a tweet from him that said, "I love my blackness and yours," in the height of I think the racial oppression that you see here. And I oftentimes would think about, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, about, the decision of maybe Mamie Till Mobley to put Emmett Till's uh, body on the cover of magazines and in the newspapers, and the role of television in broadcasting to the world, throughout the civil rights movement, exactly what was going down in the United States, and really, pulling the veil back and exposing exactly what was happening here in this country. And that is what Twitter has been. In those protests, not only was it useful, like, when Los Angeles was having like a full on tactical alert, and I'm like frantically calling my child to be like, get home because I don't want the LAPD to kill you out on the street. And I'm scrolling through Twitter to try to figure out where the LAPD is mobilizing and how close they are to where I could see his cell phone is. Like that sort of thing. Like, it's all fun and games, but it's also been life and death for a lot of us, But then being able to see, you know, folks in Bristol, England, taking down statues of slave owners there and pulling them down in response to what, the activism that was happening here, being able to see on Twitter activists in Paris, you know, tens of thousands of people marching in Paris. And I can't think of any other platform that would have allowed us to have that global understanding that we're all connected, we're all in this together. And if we don't fix it, if we don't figure it out, we all go down. Like, that has become crystal clear no matter what. Like, you know, the I think Twitter was the first place that I had conversations with trans folks, about like their experience, and like got to know like the phrasing of what in the world is cisgender, right? Like that was, and really just having a space. Yeah, there's the harassment, the death threats. Being a journalist who writes about race on the internet, people threaten to kill you all the time. But Brittany, Packnett Cunningham, she tweeted something yesterday, I think it was, where she was like, listen, do you know what Black people have been through? You don't run us off of nothing. We built this. And so there is that, masturbate, whatever, like it's all fun and games, but it's also like,
Yeah.
Liz,
I
I
think
have so much respect for you.
this
Thank
it's
you.
real. This has been real for Black folks. Like, this has been a site that has kept us alive in like very real ways, and enabled us to organize and keep our sanity in this country. And I don't think that there's any mistake in like wanting to take it down, because then you take down the public record of it. You take down the evidence. You take down the statements that people have made, all of that. And, like people getting dragged or whatever. And this is the last thing I'll say. I will never forget. Do you all remember that woman who was talking, all the racist smack, and then got off the plane, and she had lost her job?
Yeah.
Right?
Justine Sacco. Yeah.
Yes. That level of accountability. Okay. Like, no. You're not going to be out here in these streets saying this stuff. Like, you can say these things, but there are consequences for you. Like that is something that's powerful, to be able that anybody can be ratioed on this site at any time. Like,
yeah.
So anyway, like I just would say too, like, again, I'm just gonna say, like, as far as like who is in the space, like it's a reminder to us that we have a lot of work to do in media, even in broadening our circles, and for you know, for us in the journalism space, if we want to keep those voices and those sourcings, and if we don't have Twitter anymore, like we have that responsibility to talk to journalists and to people in the community who don't look like us, who don't have our backgrounds, you know?
Absolutely, yes. I mean
And
that.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were like, it is so. I mean, Twitter has just been so powerful, especially as a journalist and just like as a person who like is interested in humans, like a way to interact with people completely unlike myself, like the furry who was in here earlier,
yeah,
you know,
I
and
we
that is,
we
you know, and you know
we've
that's
had a bunch of
silly, but
messages.
it's so powerful for that, for just sort of like for both the professional reasons of like it's important as a journalist to be able to like see different viewpoints, hear what conversations are that you know people are having in other countries and other communities, stuff like that, you know, but also just like as a human. um I wanted to invite Angel to speak. He had been requested for a while.
I also just because I've gotten a lot of messages through the course of this space about this. We haven't addressed like the Iranian protests playing out on Twitter, literally as Twitter is falling apart, and this idea that Twitter might survive in some broken state, but the tragedy that I think a lot of people who've been listening for as long as you have may feel this now, like we might not be this connected again for a while. And it's like it's a very powerful feeling to watch it sort of break apart because of basically the selfish actions of like one awful Redditor, right? And like it's just very sad to know that like we were this connected at one point, and Liz talked about like losing the record of that. It's kind of scary to think about, like, what if the site just goes, and like where does it all go after that?
Okay, I guess I'll start. First
Hey,
off,
Yeah,
hey,
where does the site go after all this?
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know how the hell to follow up with that. Why did you guys give me the mic? And two, so just to introduce myself, I run the Reddit account for the Washington Post, and I've been running Reddit accounts for news brands for quite a bit. And so on that front, I think with this discourse and sort of this feeling of anxiety that we're gonna have to like hop onto different platforms or whatever to, especially from a social, like from a newspaper perspective, we're gonna have to figure out where else to look for traffic and whatnot. That's not to say I don't know how this website's gonna look like tomorrow or next week, but there's definitely some sort of hunger. Everyone's looking at Mastodon, everyone's looking at like Pinterest or Tumblr. But I did want to open up this conversation and sort of have anyone hop in to just talk about, Reddit, because we have been talking like these past 30 minutes about the need for community, and obviously there isn't like a one-to-one replacement for Twitter, but I think what Reddit does best at the very least is give a sense of community and give, homes for topics both niche and broad. So I want to just, I don't know, open it up to everyone to see what they think about, publishers and news brands and journalists, migrating over to Reddit.
I want to hear from Alex Howard.
Well, thanks for inviting me to speak. It's kind of wild to reflect that over a decade later, we're talking about Iran again. I remember being overcome with emotion hearing the voices of people from that country over a decade ago, and knowing that our government was trying to work with Twitter to keep the service up so that we could all hear what they were saying. And to be pressuring the mainstream networks, CNN, all the rest of the cable news, to be hearing what people were saying online, to take it seriously, that we were all connected in some kind of global network, speaking to each other in real time, and to feel that was special over a decade ago. And I feel like we're all straining to know what's going to happen next, and to keep feeling this ambient intimacy that David Carr spoke to that length of time ago, and knowing where this conversation would be. I'm really grateful that Twitter is holding up enough for us to have a Twitter space to have this conversation, and for all of you sharing your reflections upon what it's meant to you, to humanity writ large. I feel fairly positive that we're all going to figure out how to build something on top of all of the protocols and platforms that have come before us, because of the intentionality that you all have shared, because of your feelings that this matters. I'm not sure if Twitter's going to last much longer, given what the terrific journalists on this call and elsewhere have been sharing about what's happened with the company itself. But I feel a great deal of optimism that we're going to go back to what the open web was supposed to be, what all of the people who we've been building upon over time have wanted this to be. The people who've been building websites in the 90s, to those who've building listservs before that, those of us who are on bulletin boards, this is not new in a sense. It's just that we're so much better connected through our smartphones and much faster connections. And I'm very grateful that there's so much need for all of us to find a way forward, because I know that even if one man has bought this platform, that there will be others. And I'm certain that the people here and others will find a way for us to keep connecting. So, keep your heads up. This is going to be okay. We've seen hundreds of social media platforms go down before. Twitter's been bigger and better than a lot of them, but there can and will be something better after this. And maybe that'll be Mastodon and the Fediverse, and maybe we'll just go back to blogging together and, ruin each other's comment sections.
Yeah, I hope it's that one. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, keep it up.
Do you? This is an open question for anybody, but do you think the internet forgets how to do something? Because I feel like if you look back on it, even if a site is doing something specific and that site goes away, like the internet doesn't usually forget behaviors. So I think you might be right that the internet will continue to know how to do Twitter because we've already done it.
Exactly right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think Jack has something smart to say about that, right? Blue sky, right? The idea that Twitter should be a protocol, spot on, right? The company itself has always been struggling for a business model. Sometimes people thought it would be advertising. This idea that it could be subscriptions, that's another direction. But fundamentally, there should be a Twitter protocol that sits on top of IP, that sits on top of HTML, that sits on top of all the things that has come before, that enables us all to do short text messaging to each other in a way that enables us to create our own filters and browsers and pushes us there,
Yeah.
I wanted to invite Zaki to speak because I'm intrigued because of an anime avatar.
We haven't had one yet.
We haven't had an anime avatar yet. And anime avatars have a long history on Twitter. Not always good, but I would love to hear what you think about what's happening with Twitter right now.
Zaki. Well, that was the best possible outcome for inviting an anime avatar into the space.
In lieu of a anime avatar, I would love to hear from Jacob from Insider.
Oh, hey guys. Nice to meet some of you. I just wanted to share one thought, which I think touches on a few things that other people brought up, whether it's the viability of alternatives like Reddit or Mastodon, and also protesting, in other countries. I think one of the great features about Twitter is how flat it is. And I know, Elon Musk and many others made much ado about how blue checks and we have like special status here, but we actually kind of don't. As the people said, anyone can be ratioed here. It's one of the great features of this site. And it's kind of there's really no other social network that's as flat as Twitter that allows anyone to go viral, that allows like a local news reporter to go as viral with like some big scoop, an important scoop, as some national news reporter, or someone to post a viral video of a police officer killing someone, or anything like that. And I think that's really what's going to be missed about Twitter, and that's also why I kind of don't see any possible viable alternative, at least in the short term.
Do you
Hello?
think it'll actually just go down? I mean, because it
Wait, can I
also,
speak?
well,
Zachy?
Yo, okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you guys added me. I heard somebody say anime avatar.
That's you. Welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mostly play fighting games. I like anime and manga. I pretty much use Twitter entirely just to play fighting games, and most of the people in the fighting game community, they use Discord, or a lot of them have been moving on to Mastodon, and there's been like a new website that people have made like in the past week or so, but it's pretty buggy and it doesn't work that much.
what's the new
Um,
website?
I don't know. I think it's got like FGC Week. It's for fighting games. It's not specifically for like everything. For like it's not like a Twitter replacement. It's more for the fighting game community trying to find a replacement for Twitter. The other thing I use it for a lot is anime and manga. The manga and anime industry, in Japan, they actually use Twitter a ton to communicate with each other. And it's actually really wild that Twitter might just die and they have no other way of really finding each other.
Wait, can you just explain? A fighting game is that's like a video game where there's fighting?
Katie, oh
Yeah.
my God, Katie. It's like
Yeah, like
Street
Street
Fighter,
Fighter.
Katie.
Yeah.
Come on.
Is that like old Street Fighter?
No, they make new ones all the time, Katie.
Assume that some people in here don't know that much about video games.
Some people.
Mortal Kombat, Super Smash Bros. There we go.
Okay,
I
so
think
when you're on, I just want to know about like what happens when you're on fighting game Twitter. You said you use it to do fighting games. Like, are you like just talking about them? Are you talking with
So
other people you play with?
yes, also the fighting games up until the pandemic, the majority of fighting games are made in fighting games that people play, at least that are popular in the fighting game community, are made in Japan. And prior to the pandemic, the online netcode was actually really bad because most fighting games are just arcade games that get ported over the consoles. They actually don't have good netcode. So what ended up happening during the pandemic was a bunch of the companies started adding like client side, I forgot what the term is, like rollback netcode. It's like client side like guessing, I want to say. You know how like when you play shooting games, sometimes you get shot when you go like around a corner? That doesn't happen in fighting games.
Oh,
prior.
Katie, shooting games are games where you shoot people. Just to
Yeah.
So wait, let me ask you something. What does the fighting game community think of Elon Musk?
Overwhelmingly negative. Fighting game community is very, very like lefty, like loads of trans people,
Really?
loads of super. The community is mostly for Twitter. What people mostly use it for is like finding local tournaments, like fighting games. Because prior to, unlike other video game communities, the majority of the people who are very invested, they go to local events and they travel constantly. So they might travel like 3 to 4 times a year. Like I live in North America, right? I might go to like an event or two every year if I have the money for it. And Twitter is mostly used to like communicate, to like find other people and stuff like that. But yeah.
Well, I hope that you were able to, find some sort of fighting. I don't mean to laugh about fighting. It's obviously very popular. It's way more popular than
No, they're not that
tweeting.
popular. They're very not popular.
We have a couple people whose hands have been up for a while. Senjukta, are you still here?
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me speak. I wanted to sort of throw this question and thoughts that I had I'm actually doing my PhD on gender trolling, and Twitter is my field research field. And earlier this year, when I was writing one of the chapters on how Twitter is the public square, town square, I was looking at the Habermas's framework of public sphere, like coffee houses of the 17th century, and I made my case. I argued how Twitter is exactly, like filling a few gaps, like racial gap, gender gap that prevailed in the 17th century. We now have filled those gaps. And we followed the other frameworks on Twitter, and Twitter is the town square. But now that, and within a few months of my actually writing that, Mr. Elon Musk has done this shit. So I'm kind of like, I'm now thinking that, and this is a question that I'm going to throw out. Is the town square because people gather there? So because people are gathering, that's why it becomes that place where everybody goes out, the first place you go out from your home to gather information, hear, speak, exchange ideas, meet people? Or does the architecture of the place itself matter for it to become the town square? So, for example, the location, does it have to be centrally located? I think it's both. Personally, I feel that wherever public will gather could become the public square. So today, right now, we are in Twitter. We could migrate to another platform, and that could become, and all of the things that I've just heard, I've been taking notes also. I've been just hearing how we can't archive, the problem with, there's no question of taking it down. Absolutely, there's no question of taking it down, because it seems like you would lose so much of public data, which is public property, which is not Mr. Musk's property. And I just can't even understand how is it even legally. I don't know about American law. I can't even understand how is it legally even possible for one person to simply, because he has the money, to simply destroy all of these public property. Every conversation we've had on Twitter in the last 15 years that I have been on Twitter, I've joined Twitter 15 years ago, is public property. But at the same time, I also feel that it's possible for people to migrate and make a new public square. And then the location and the architecture of the square also organically develops and becomes the new center. Usually public squares used to be the center of the village or the town, but then a new place can become the new center, and everything then gathers around that new center. So it's kind of works organically. However, it would take about like 15 years, as it has taken for Twitter to come to what we are today. Similarly, whatever new place we migrate to, it'll take another 15 years or 20 years. And as I think Alex said, that probably we'll go back to like blogging, long form blogging, the commenting on each other's blog, hyperlinking each other's blog. Probably in the meanwhile, that's what we will do in case Twitter shut down. So, although I don't think that Twitter is going to actually shut down. But yeah, I mean, there's no other place as of now. There's no question of migrating. I have not migrated anywhere else. And I've been trolled on Twitter so much. I've been abused on Twitter, but I love this place. So it is like a love and hate relationship with Twitter for over 15 years. So it's kind of, so I just wanted to, throw my thoughts on public square and town square, Twitter being that town square. I think right now it is the town square, global town square. There's no other place as connected, as flat, as allowing each other to connect that Twitter is. Nothing comes close. But if we close this down, will we make organically together create another place? Yes, we will. It'll take time. And in the meanwhile, we'll probably go back to the, what we were doing in 2004, 2005. We were just blogging. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me speak.
No, thank you. That was well said. Katie, we've been doing this since 9 o'clock.
We've been doing this a long time. I also just want to say really quickly that I'm really sorry. There have been a bunch of people who have messaged me who have been saying they've been requesting to speak, but I haven't been able to manage the requests very efficiently. I want to believe that there is something buggy going on, but there are a bunch of people who wanted to speak and I could not get to them, like literally from a technical standpoint. And I want to say I'm sorry. It was not my fault, kind of my fault. I'm
not
sorry.
your fault. Not your fault. I just want to thank everyone who's listened. I mean, we peaked at 21,000 concurrent listeners, which is just out of control, and I feel like we did a really good job of showing just how crazy this website is and how huge and personal and weird and fantastic. And also, you guys got to hear about Masturbate Log a lot, which is a victory, I guess, too.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for letting
Yep.
me speak my piece.
Yeah.
Taylor, if you're still listening, I'd love to get dinner sometime, but
All right.
aside from
Okay.
that.
All right. Katie, what do you think?
I think it's almost 1 a.m. For our time, and I'm getting sleepy.
Yeah, the new Pokemon
But
game's been out for an hour, and I'm jonesing pretty hard to start that bad boy. So I got a long night ahead of me.
yeah, I like I said, I thank you everyone for tuning in to listen to this. This was really fun. Ryan and I used to host a podcast together called Internet Explorer, and we haven't done it for many years. And I messaged Ryan tonight. I was like, Ryan, one last ride.
I
Let's
was
do it.
like, Katie, the site will be up
And Brian,
tomorrow.
Brian was like, "Ugh, can we do it tomorrow?"
And then I looked on, but I hadn't looked at Twitter for many hours. Then I looked at Twitter and I was like, yeah, we got to do it right now. This thing's going down.
Yeah, I was like, this is it. This is the last time. So hopefully this will not be the last time that anyone gets to tweet or exist on Twitter. And probably it will still be here in the morning, and we'll all be full of regret for ever having been in this space. I have, just spent the last 3 hours of my life with both Ryan and a guy who just tweets every time he cranks off. So that, we all have regrets about Twitter. We all have things that we think are wonderful about Twitter. I think that we covered a lot of ground. But this was really fun. Ryan, I'm so glad that we got to do this together. It was just a nice time with you.
Yeah, thank you for organizing this, Katie. This was amazing.
Um,
And thank you all for listening and joining and sharing your stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone can take anything away from this, it's like, I don't know, go find someone out there on Twitter who you didn't follow, and like follow someone new who like lives in a different country or is completely different from you, or
Yeah.
is, essentially doing weird bot behavior. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
that's what's like
to be sort of
magic and good about
sentimental.
Twitter.
To be sort of sentimental, I feel like my biggest takeaway tonight is that like the thing that makes Twitter so maddening and frustrating is also the thing that makes it infinitely captivating and exciting. And like, you can't get rid of one without the other. And tonight, like we did a really good job, I think, of like showing what you can do with Twitter and the conversations you can have, but you can't have boundaries to have those conversations. So it's what a website. I can't wait to see you all on Mastodon.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank